All right, dear friends, dear friends, let us get going. Brand new chapter. We are 33 chapters into Tanya, and this means that we are officially only 20 chapters away from the end of Tanya. I know the only problem is you never really finish Tanya, but Tanya is 53 chapters. We're beginning chapter 33. So this is an unbelievable accomplishment. I've said this to you before, but I have one of my deep, dark thoughts, right? Deep, dark worries that I have. Not worries, but I always wonder. The Tanya class is something, when we started it, I knew that we're in this for the long haul. A Tanya class is not a 6-week course you can knock out quickly, and it's a real long journey. The problem with long series of classes is that it's just reality that as you go through, you bleed people. It's part of life, right? Even a 6-week course, you never have at the end of the 6 weeks everybody who registered and came to week number 1. It's always what happens, and it could be because somebody thought they're going to like the topic, they discovered they don't like the topic. It could be because life happens, something came up, they got busy for a month or two, and then what happens? They fell off the train, and it's hard for them to catch back up. And the problem with Tanya is that it's also difficult, at least from my experience, what I've seen is to get new people to join, because it's very intimidating if you join in the middle of Tanya, and especially all of you people are really intimidating, all these great scholars. And it's like, oh no, I'm not qualified to join this Tanya class. So what basically happens is you slowly, and this is what happened. We slowly lost people, even for the best of reasons, and we're not gaining new people. So it basically is, at this point, the class is up to us. We still have another 20 chapters to go. We did 33, so that's amazing. We're over 50% through Tanya, but at the same time, I sometimes wonder, deep back in my brain, are we going to manage to get to the end? I think yes. I think we have a great crew over here, and I think we'll be able to make it till the end. But it's just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary that we are over 70 classes into learning Tanya, and we are still here doing this. And I want to thank you all, and I want to wish all of us as we go into a new year very soon, that Hashem should give all of us the strength and the success to be able to continue marching on. It should be a successful coming year in learning Tanya, and both materially and spiritually, we should all grow and be prosperous, and including spiritual prosperity, which is by studying Torah and doing more mitzvahs. And we should really feel that it's been a good year of net gain, again, materially and spiritually. So, chapter 33. Let us get going. But my point was, I just want to thank you all for being here. I really mean that. I know that it sounds like you are all the ones learning from me, but the real truth is that this is a tremendous learning experience for me. The way I learn to prepare for these classes in a certain way is helping me understand Tanya in a way that I've never had before. And by the way, the book now that I'm working on will almost certainly would not have happened if we were learning Tanya here. So that project is a direct, it spiraled directly out from this class. And I want to thank you, because if you weren't here, I wouldn't be able to do this, and I would lose that as well. So it's a win-win from both sides. And I just want to thank you, because it's going to be such a joy every time we get to learn another chapter, begin a new chapter. It's a whole new thrill. So I just want to thank you, and thank God we're in this together. So, all right, let's get going. Chapter 33. We are still in the chapters of Tanya in the theme of joy. Let's get a little bit of context. Chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe began the topic of joy, which is, up until chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe is giving us techniques how to be successful in life. In other words, how to be a Beinoni. What's a Beinoni? A Beinoni is somebody who has enough inspiration, enough gas in his or her tank to always be in a healthy place in life. They are never losing, which means the animal soul never catches them, and they never fall into moments of weakness. And the opposite, they're always in command and control of their life with their godly soul. That's the success story of a Jew. The Alter Rebbe taught us in Tanya how that is very attainable, that is practical. All you got to make sure is that you're in a good place every single day, and the Alter Rebbe gave us those techniques. Okay. Then the Alter Rebbe taught us in chapter 26. But, there's a big but. The whole Tanya is not going to work if you don't have one critical ingredient. That critical ingredient is called joy. So you could be doing everything Tanya tells you to do. If you're missing joy, the whole thing falls flat. It's not going to work. So therefore, joy becomes a very important issue to deal with, especially because we all know in the world today, we're all struggling. How do we make sure we maintain our happiness, especially when things drag us down? So starting from chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe walked us through different issues, common issues, different impediments to joy, and the Alter Rebbe helped give us the correct attitude. Chapter 33, we perhaps have the chapter where the Alter Rebbe defines for us what is the constant pulse of joy for a Jew. That's what this chapter is all about. This chapter is all about touching and getting in touch with the joy that is within our souls. There's been a theme that we've been speaking about in the past few chapters, how we need to make a certain mental and emotional shift. Naturally, we consider our body and animal soul as a higher priority than our godly soul. Breakfast? If we're hungry, stop, drop, and roll. Breakfast right now. Oh, my godly soul, it's not as pressing. That's just human nature. Human nature is that our animal soul has a higher priority within our consciousness. The Alter says we need to change that. We need to help. We need to make a conscious effort to rewire ourselves. The real me is not my body. The real me is not my animal soul. The real me is my godly soul. And try to lift up the presence, the identity with your godly soul, and identify more with your godly soul than with your animal soul. When you do that, says the Alter Rebbe, you will start feeling and sensing your godly soul more because you identify with it more. You're giving it more space to express itself. And all of a sudden, all the gifts, all the dividends of your godly soul are accessible to you. Now, what does your godly soul have that you could tap into? So last chapter we spoke, it has love. Your animal soul has no love. It loves itself. That's it. Who do I love? Me. Anybody else I don't love. Basically, all love of the animal soul is simply a way to love myself more, right? The animal soul doesn't love sushi. It loves itself. Sushi makes me feel good, so I love sushi. But I don't really love sushi. I love myself. That's how the animal soul thinks. Your godly soul really loves fellow Jews. There's real love for the other in your godly soul. Says the Alter Rebbe taught us, the more we're in touch and the more we do this, of lifting up the presence and identifying more with our godly soul, we all of a sudden get in touch with this whole new world. A whole new consciousness unfolds for us. Chapter 33, the Alter Rebbe is going to teach us that there's something else which our godly soul has. And this is another one of the dividends that we could tap into as we are on this journey to get in touch more with our godly soul. What is it? Our godly soul has the gift of faith. Now, what does faith do for you? That's what this chapter is going to teach us. I don't mean what does faith do for us religiously. Yeah, faith religiously helps us believe more, whatever. But on a practical level, what happens when we get more in touch with our soul's faith? So before we jump in over here, and I want to warn you, today's a deep class. Today is a little bit more on the intellectual side than on the emotional side. We're building up for the emotion, which is going to be next week. So you work hard this week, and you reap the reward next week. This week is deep. We're going to be learning a deep idea in Chassidus, and the Alter is taking us very deep, very quickly. We're starting with the deep end in this class. But let's first talk a little bit about faith. I want to share with you a little bit of a little anecdote, not a story, but an anecdote, an illustration that the Talmud gives. The Talmud gives such a scenario. You have a thief. What does a thief do? You break into homes, or you break into shops late at night. When the whole world is sleeping, that's when you strike. So you have a Jewish thief. Now, in the olden days, how did you break into homes? In the olden days, they bolted homes much better than they do today. Today, everything's made out of plastic and plywood. So, in the olden days, you couldn't break in through the front door. So how did you break in? You either went from on top through the chimney or on bottom. Homes didn't have a foundation. Homes didn't have, it wasn't a solid floor. The floor itself was dirt. So all you had to do is dig under the wall, and you're right in the house. That's what thieves used to do. They'd go to the back of the house, dig their way in, and that's how they would steal from homes. So you have a Jewish thief. He borrows a little hole, a little tunnel to break into a home. And he's about to make his move. He's about to strike. He has a home. He wants to steal from it. He's going in. But we all know, stealing from a house, it's risky business. If you get caught, you can get killed. Who knows? Whatever. Thieves don't like getting caught. He's scared of getting caught. The Talmud says before he enters his burrow, about to strike, he whispers a prayer to God. God, please help me be successful. That's the whole illustration. He's about to go steal, but he's a little bit scared. He whispers a prayer. What is the Talmud trying to illustrate to us with this story? What's really happening over here? What do you think? Any thoughts?
He's got chutzpah.
He has chutzpah. Okay, that's interesting.
Is that
Yes, Shelley, go ahead.
Is that supposed to illustrate some kind of faith?
Yeah, this is a commentary on faith. Does this thief have faith in God? Does he believe in God?
Is that the story? Is that what they're trying to say?
I don't know. What do you say? Let's unpack it a little bit. I want you to say, does this thief have faith? Does he believe in God?
Appears that way.
Appears that way. Why? Because he's praying to God. So here's a thief that clearly believes in God. He believes in praying to God, and he believes that God could grant him success in life. Sounds wonderful. So what's the irony here? If you believe in God, if you have faith in God, what are you doing breaking into a home? What are you doing violating one of God's commandments to you? If you have faith, why don't you have faith that God could provide you with an honest living by doing an honest, respectable job? So there's something interesting going on over here. The person is living an oxymoron. If you don't believe in God, then don't pray. No problem. Live your life. If you do believe in God, what are you doing? What are you doing stealing? And the real truth is, I think every single one of us, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, have this exact syndrome. We believe in God, but only to a point. I believe in God, but I'll still go steal. I believe in God, but not here, not now, not this. What's going on over here? The Talmud is giving us a very interesting commentary that the Alter Rebbe built in a certain way. The whole Chabad philosophy is built upon this premise, which is like this. Every single Jew has faith. Every single Jew has faith. You know why? Because you're a Jew. You have a Jewish soul. If you have a Jewish soul, you have faith. This is something that the Alter Rebbe introduced to us in chapter 18. The Alter Rebbe believes that every single Jew has faith, and that faith is very real. It's not because it was told as a kid that there's a God the same way he was told there's a tooth fairy. Kids believe in tooth fairies. Maybe that's also what it means. We believe in God. Is that what it means to believe in God? A lot of people are cynical. They say faith is fake. Faith is a coping mechanism. Faith is something that you come up with in a foxhole. Faith is something your parents tell you, and until you discover that faith is false, or until you become a little bit more cynical, or until you break out of your naivete, you have faith just like you believe in Santa Claus and you believe in tooth fairies. The Alter Rebbe says no. Jews die for faith. Nobody dies for tooth fairies. A Jew is willing to put down their life for God. That's a real thing. It's very, very real. Every single Jew believes in God, which means deep within the soul of every single Jew has faith. And they know it, by the way. Jews know they have faith. What's the only problem? What's the only problem? The nature of faith is that it can be something that you have, but it doesn't necessarily have that much relevance in real practical life, just like the thief. Yeah, I believe in God, but practically, I need to make money, I steal. So faith is, yeah, that's in theory. I believe in God, whatever. Practically, is it going to change my life? Am I going to make sacrifices? Am I going to stop myself from doing? Am I going to inconvenience myself for this faith? That's already very, very different. In other words, we all are born with faith. The only problem is that that faith is a little bit in the subconscious. We need to develop it. We need to make it into something which is able to be brought out. Every single human, for example, is born with the ability to speak, but nobody is born speaking. You need to teach yourself how to speak. And you need to practice that muscle. Even the physical muscles, moving the mouth, and also the mental muscle, learning how to speak, learning how to process those thoughts and articulate yourself. If you don't bring it out, okay, it will be somewhere in your subconscious you could speak, but you don't actually do it. Faith is something you're born with, but it needs to be developed. It needs to be brought out. In a certain way, you need to learn the art of faith. You need to teach yourself faith, similar to how you need to teach yourself how to walk. If you don't do it, you'll have it, but it won't make much of a difference to you. You're not actually accessing it. So faith has two parts to it. On the one hand, you don't need to do anything to have it. You're born with it. On the other hand, you're born with it. That's the good news. The bad news is, now you got to do something with it. You need to develop it. How do you develop faith? You develop faith by consciously, on the conscious level, learning about your faith and trying to understand your faith. Try to connect with it mentally and try to connect with it emotionally to the point that it is something that is very much a part of your thought process and your emotional process. How do you think? How do you feel? Train yourself more and more simply by focused meditation, contemplation on the matters of faith, on the topics of faith, until it is something which actually starts trickling down into the way we think day to day, minute to minute. This is something that the Alter Rebbe championed. Jews need to, men, women, and children need to focus specifically on topics of faith, matters of God. What is God? Let's learn the deep parts of Torah that discuss this. It's like that a Jew could actually cultivate their own faith to the point they could live consciously with their faith. Now, we're not going to get into the history of this right now, but I just want to tell you, maybe next class we'll get into the history of this. This was a controversial position. The Alter got into a lot of trouble for this position from his contemporaries. And it's all around this chapter. This chapter is what got the Alter in trouble. The Alter had a lot of explaining to do for himself because of this chapter. So it's a pivotal chapter here in Tanya, and also to understand what the Alter stood for and what made the Alter so unique, and really in a certain way why he founded Chabad. This is an unbelievable chapter. The Alter felt faith is not going to be real. It's not going to be something that helps somebody in real life situations, and in real life dilemmas and challenging times, unless it is cultivated by the Jew, him or herself, personally. They have to do the heavy lifting to bring out that faith to be something they could live with in their own minds and hearts. Bring it out from the subconscious to the conscious. This is going to be a theme of this chapter. What the Alter is going to do for us is, he's first going to give us some homework. The homework is easy to write down, and the hard part is doing it. The homework that the Alter is going to give us is to meditate. Meditate, let's clarify this again. In Tanya and in Judaism, meditation doesn't mean to empty out the brain. It means to have focused contemplation on an idea. Think about something without distractions. Don't think about anything else. Spend even 10 minutes, but spend a half hour, 2 hours, thinking deeply about one topic, one concept, to the point that you really start connecting with it. The Alter is going to give us that homework right now. He's going to give us a little bit of a summary of this idea. This is a very deep idea in Hasidic philosophy. We're going to learn about it. And the Alter is going to tell us that we need to contemplate about this to the point that we really, really mentally connect with it. Next week, we'll learn what happens when you do that. So this we're going to be learning the intellectual side of the chapter. Let's begin. Chapter 33. How are we doing so far? We're doing okay? Okay. Chapter 33. The joy of your soul's faith. Okay. That's giving it away a little bit. Okay, but here we go. Part 1, exposing your soul's faith. Says the Alter Rebbe. Here is another way to inject genuine happiness into your life. Oh, this is the way how to get real happiness flowing through your life. Especially at those times when you see that your soul needs to be lit up with some of your heart's joyous sparkle and shine. Right? Especially at those times, sometimes we feel it. We're in a little bit of like a negative space. We're not feeling so good. We're not feeling that joy flowing through us so much. The Alter says this is really what you got to get going at. This is a good remedy for that. So this is in general the way. This is happiness. This chapter is all about the constant current of happiness, and especially turn to this chapter if you ever feel that you're losing a little bit of that sparkle. Says the Alter, how do you do it? It starts with thinking deeply. This is the Alter. You got to think your way through life. Everything's about giving yourself proper attitudes, healthy perceptions. Think deeply. Not just think deeply, but get a mental picture and let that picture open up your mind to the point that it becomes so alive, it's like a picture. You live with it. Were you like that when you read books? Not read, but I mean like as a kid. I feel like kids maybe get this a little bit more. When I read books as a kid, my imagination would go on fire, right? Were you such readers? It's just funny. Not everybody's like that. I discovered later in life, not everybody's like that. Some people read books, they don't even imagine things. By me, I'm reading a book, like a novel, I'm imagining the scene. I know what people look like. I know what the environment looks like. I'm envisioning it. It's alive in my mind. The Alter says, I want you to think about this to such a degree that it becomes alive in your mind. It's like a mental, you see it. You get a picture of it. Maybe not necessarily a picture because we're not discussing physical matters over here, but it becomes so real. You're so in tune with it. You're so in touch with it. That's how much you've thought about this. What should you think about to such a degree? Says the Alter, but think about the concept of God's true oneness. At the very heart of our faith is the idea that God is one. Now, let me ask you a question. The Alter says over here, God's true oneness. So there's the idea of God's oneness. God is one. And then there's the idea that God is really one, truly one. What does anybody care to to try to help us over here? What does the Alter Rebbe mean by God's true oneness? Let's see if our strong Tanya group over here maybe has an idea. What's God's true oneness versus just God's oneness?
God is, even though you can't see God because the world we live in, God is everywhere. He's the only thing that exists. We can't
that was it. He's the only thing that
exist.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, conventional saying that God is one, conventionally that means like this. Right? We say in our prayers, Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. The Lord is our God, the Lord is one. What does Lord is one mean? It means there's only one God, there's not two gods. That's called monotheism. Right? Monotheism, mono means one, theism is from like the word theo, which means a God. There's only one theo, only one God. Okay. The Baal Shem Tov, when he taught Chassidus, he said, no. It goes so much deeper. One God means there's only one God, not two gods. No. It means there really is only one thing in existence. Existence is only one. And that one existence is God. saying God is one, we're saying God's true oneness. It means God is the only thing that exists, which goes totally against our perception. We could believe in a God. God is one, I'm two, this table's three, this mic is four, computer five, you're six. I'm saying there's lots of stuff in this universe. God is one. He could be the first one. He could be the only God. But what do you mean? There's a whole world out there. True faith means, and this is the true faith that we all possess within our soul. No. That's maybe your perception. Okay? Perceptions could be deceiving. There's only God. But 1 second. How does that work? So do we not exist? Is the world fake? Is the world is the world just an illusion? Right? Elon Musk is still pretty convinced that the whole world is a simulation. Right? You're aware of that? He's not sure. Is the world real or is it just a simulation? So what does it mean God's the only thing that exists? Do we not exist? Like we all know that our dreams don't really exist. That's right. It's fake. It's an illusion. It's a fleeting moment of confusion. That's what. So are we just a dream? You know, if you within a larger context, are we not real? Are we not really existing? Do we think we exist? What does it mean God's the only thing? No. So the Torah itself says that God created the world. So the world is real. The world exists. You know why we know the world exists? Because the Torah tells us the world exists. Right? That's how we know. So the world does exist. But somehow, even though I exist, even though you exist, even though the world exists, yet God is still the only thing. How does that work? And this is a massive, massive concept. This is a massive topic to study in Chassidus. It's not a simple concept to learn. And in fact, part 2 of Tanya, which we didn't even touch yet, right? The 53 chapters of Tanya are called the Book of the Beinoni. The second book of Tanya is the Alter Rebbe's philosophy and theology. It's all around this topic. The relationship between the world and God and the oneness of God. And it's based upon the verse, Shema Yisrael, Hear O Israel. Very, very deep part of Tanya. It's a beautiful part of Tanya. Very not psychological and emotional, and very much philosophical and intellectual. Let's see. Maybe we'll do that when we finish the 53 chapters. This is the idea. It's a big topic in Chassidus. God is the only thing that exists. It's not a topic we can master in 1 hour or in the next half hour. We're not going to master it. But the author is going to give us the Cliff Notes. Okay? But because the author is going to give us the Cliff Notes, we're going to a very deep concept, very quickly and succinctly. This is just barely scratching the surface of it. But this is the topic that the author says is the key that we need to be meditating on, which is really means the author is giving us the job over here. We need to learn Chassidus. We need to learn Chassidus. We need to learn the teachings about God's oneness. And we need to really learn it to the point that it leaves a very deep impression in our heads, in our minds, in our brains. How does this work? Here's the Cliff Notes. Here's the overview. Says the Alter Rebbe, think about how he fills all worlds. God pervades all of reality, all the worlds, higher and lower, all the spiritual worlds. Even this entire physical earth is filled with his glory. The world is not here and God is somewhere out there. Where is God? Is he somewhere out there? No. God fills this entire earth. There's no nook or cranny of reality where God is not. This entire universe, the entire physical universe is filled with God. God's glory, God's presence. God is here. So where is God? Number one, the first thing you have to know is God fills, permeates all of reality. And yet, all of it might as well, quite literally, be like nothing as far as he's concerned. In relationship to God, everything is like it's nothing. Let's explain that a little bit more. Says the Alter Rebbe, there is just him and only him in the higher worlds and the lower worlds. Exactly as there was only him before he created everything in the 6 days of creation. What existed before God created the world? Well, definitely not earth. Right? Definitely not matter. God didn't create matter yet. But nothing existed. Even logic didn't even exist. The laws of physics, laws of nature didn't even exist. 1 + 1 = 2 didn't exist. God created one. God created another. The logic was itself is a byproduct of creation. There's nothing before God. Nothing that we know of. Not only physical stuff, but even conceptual. God was simply alone. Nothing on any level of thingness, even spiritual reality. Nothing existed before creation. God was alone, one and only one. Which is, by the way, a theme in the high holiday liturgy, and really the daily davening includes this theme. Before the world was created, God was alone. Let's continue. Even in this space in which this world was created, the very space we know of, the heavens and the earth and all that populates them, there was just Him alone pervading this entire conceptual space. Before the world was created, we have only Him. So just try to imagine that. There's no world. There's no nothing. There's no reality. No even construct of reality. There's no time. There's no space. There's no dimensions. The laws of nature itself don't exist. Just God. That's what you have before creation. Says the Alter Rebbe, and so too now. The real truth is nothing has changed. Right now, page 247, there is only Him alone. That is the real truth. God's true oneness means that even though God created a world, God created me and you, and there's stuff happening, and no. But in truth, from His perspective, nothing changed. Why? And here's the clincher, because all He has created is quite literally a non-entity relative to His existence. Here we have it. This is the basic idea. Do we exist? Yes. But let's put our existence into context. When you put our existence next to God's existence, it's as if we don't exist. Now, I'll give you two very basic, but way too simplistic, which means they're not good examples, but let's begin this way. Let me give you an example. If you're making a soup and you put into the soup a drop of water, a drop, all right? Which means, let's say you're making a soup, you washed off the ladle is still a drop wet, and you put it into the soup. Did you just change the taste of the soup because you put in a few drops of water from the ladle, the wet ladle? Did the soup now change? No. Why not? It's too little water. It's a big pot of soup. One drop of water is just simply not enough to make any difference to the soup. So does the soup actually have a new quantity of water in it? Yeah, technically, yes. There's now a new, larger quantity of water in the soup. But it's not enough to be of any significance. It's as if it's not there. Which means the fact that you now put this new drop of water in there didn't change anything. The soup is still the exact same soup, exact same texture, exact same taste. Okay. So that's the idea that does a drop of water exist? Yes, it does exist. But if you put it into a certain context, you realize that perhaps it's as if it's not there. I mean, it is there, but it's not making any actual difference. Or another little example, if this room that I'm in has quite good window coverage. There's a lot of windows in this room, and not bad lighting. So right now it's getting dark already, but if it was during the day and I lit a candle here, let's say I put a candle on the windowsill, did I just add new light into this room? Practically, meaning, technically, yeah. Technically, yeah. Practically, did this room just get any brighter? No. Which means adding this light, and if I'll put out the light, the room is not getting any darker. The light is not doing anything. It's too insignificant to make any difference over here. There's already sunlight coming in. There's lights coming in from these bulbs over here. One little candle ain't doing nothing in this room. So, yeah, is there a candle here? Yeah. Is it real? Yeah. I could start a forest fire with it. Oh, God forbid. But it's a real thing. But it's not doing anything over here. It's of no significance. So this is a very, very simplistic way to understand the statement. The Alter is going to give it to us right now in a much more complex way. But this is what we'll call in Hebrew, and we spoke about this word a few chapters ago, something called bittul. Bittul. Bittul there's no English equivalent for the word bittul. But bittul is perhaps the top word in all of Chassidus. Bittul. Bittul is a word that describes the idea of how something is less of a reality in relation to something else. So that drop of water in the pot becomes buttul. It has bittul in relationship to the pot of soup. It is buttul. It's as if it's not there. So the Alter was telling us we need to meditate about how God is one and the world is buttul to God. Okay? There's bittul of the world. Okay. Yes, Leah.
So can we use the word nullified?
Yeah, that's a very weak translation, but it could work. It's a translation, it works.
When we were doing the prayer class, was that like the top rung, which was like surrender?
That was, oh, 1 second. I'm not sure what just happened over here. Oh, there we go. That's a good question. There is the idea of surrender. That's like active bittul. But bittul is not something you have to do. It's a fact. Bittel's a fact. The world is buttul to God. Not because you did something, not because you thought something. It's a fact. It's a fact of reality that the world is buttul in relationship to God. But now we need to try to understand that a little bit more. Okay? So this is going to be a little bit of an interesting concept over here. Okay. The Alter is going to give us two analogies for bittul, and the Alter is going to take it even deeper. I give you the analogy of a drop of water in a soup and a candlelight in sunlight. Candlelight is very, very good when there's no sunlight. They don't give a lot of light. It's very noticeable. Its existence really emerges and is felt. Let's go even deeper. Why is the world buttul? Is it because God is so big and the world is so small? That's a simplistic way to look at it. That's like saying the drop of water, it's not doing anything in the big pot it's not doing anything in the big pot of soup. So you can say the world is like a drop of water in relationship to everything that God has, to the infinite God. But it goes much deeper than that. The world really is buttul. It's as if it doesn't exist. You know why? Because whenever something is still within its source, its existence is totally buttul. Its existence is as if it's not there. It's as if it's not in existence. And the Alter is going to give us two analogies of how something, when it's outside of its source, when it emerges from its source, it becomes a whole thing. And its existence is very noticeable. But when it's still within its source, it totally loses its existence. The Alter is going to tell us, let's think about it. Is the world outside God? No. God is everywhere. There's nothing outside of God. The world is still within its source. And anything within its source is as if it's not there. It's as if it doesn't exist. Okay? This is a very deep idea. We have about 20 minutes. We have two analogies, and the analogies themselves are very deep. So let's begin. Analogy number one, top of page 247. The analogy number one, your words. Let's just think about words. What are words? Okay, let's back up for a second. We're not going to read yet inside. We use words to speak. We also use words to think. Whenever we're consciously thinking about something, we are thinking with words. We're basically telling ourselves a narrative. We're describing things to ourselves. So we have words. We use words. They're a very important tool for humans. We literally process our own lives. We process what we're thinking. We process what we know. We process what we understand. We process our emotions with words. Words in our thoughts and words in our speech. Our thought helps us understand ourselves. Our speech, words allow others to understand us. So it's really a way of communicating with ourselves and communicating with others. The words are helping us understand, and they're helping define and capture emotions and understanding. What do we know? What wisdom do we have? What's a certain mental intuition? What are we feeling right now? Is it love? Is it hate? Is it fear? Is it joy? The words help us give a certain understanding to it. What am I feeling? That's what words give to us. Where do words come from? Where do your words come from? Are words part of the core of your soul? Or are they something that are not part of your soul, but you find them kind of outside of your soul to help give a voice to your soul? I'll give you an example. One form of expressing yourself is with a tune. I can't do this. I actually wish I could do this. If a genie gave me the choice to get something new that I don't have, it would be the ability to express myself musically, creatively musically. I think I'm musical, but not creatively musical. So, but you could pick up a violin or sit by a piano, and you could knock out some keys and express yourself with music. Or now, the violin sound and the piano sound, that music is not coming from your soul. Meaning you're expressing yourself musically, but the music itself is coming from a tool, which is not part of you. That's something outside of your soul. Are words like an instrument, or do they emerge from your soul? Says Chassidus, okay, it's a deep question. It's a deep question. Says Chassidus that words emerge from your soul. It must be that way. The way we speak and the way we process things, it is not like an instrument. An instrument is something which is not you. It's like a keyboard, and you could tap the instrument and it makes sounds, or you could blow into an instrument and it makes sounds. But the sound is not coming from, it's not coming from your soul. It's not the language of your soul necessarily. It's not emerging from the soul itself. Your words emerge from your soul itself. Okay? Now, it's a big idea. It's a big topic. The more you study it, the more Chassidus really proves that it must be this way. Words must be emerging from your soul. But here's the interesting thing. When you have an emotion, does your emotion have a language? If you feel love, do you feel love in English or in French or in Russian or in Hebrew? Or is the emotion beyond language? Emotion is beyond language. We think in a language, we don't feel in a language. So language is not really there within an emotion. The emotion itself transcends language, transcends words. Same thing about intellect. If you understand something, what language do you understand that in? What language do I understand it in? If I understand something, I understand it. I get it. Now, I think about it maybe in a certain language, but the actual logic, the actual intellect that I now have is not a language. It's more like an energy. Like you have now I understand it. I maybe heard it in a language, I maybe read it in a book in a language, and I'll maybe think about it in a language. But it itself is beyond the language. So what the soul actually has, it's intellect. It's emotions. What is it feeling? What does it know? What does it perceive? How does it understand things? That's beyond the language. At the core of the soul, there's no language. It uses language to express itself. It uses language to communicate itself. But at the core of the soul, it's beyond language. But yet, the language emerges from within the emotion itself. But for some reason, within the emotion itself, you totally don't send the words. Meaning the words, let me say it again. The words emerge from the emotion itself. But you only sense those words when you step away from the emotion and you see the way the words are able to emerge. Within the emotion, there's no words. Outside of the emotion, the words come out. The words are noticeable. You notice their existence. So it's interesting. Where do our words come from? From the emotion itself. When we feel an emotion, our soul itself is giving us, with the emotion, the words with which we will process that emotion. But within the emotion, the words are totally unnoticeable. It's as if they don't exist. They exist there because they're coming from there. But you totally don't notice them. Which is indeed why, in the moment when we're emotional, we don't have the words to process it. We tell that to our kids, right? If a kid's upset, what do you say? Go to your room, calm down, in 10 minutes, let's talk about it. You can't talk to a kid when they're upset right now. Why? They're in the emotion. In the emotion, there's no words. There are words. The words are there. They must be there because the words will be coming from this emotion. They're emerging from this emotion. But within the emotion itself, when you stand within the emotion itself, when you're surrounded, when you're in the atmosphere of the emotion, you don't sense the words. You got to leave the words. You got to leave the emotion, and then you sense the words. What the author is going to tell us is, words exist within the emotion, but within the emotion, they are batal. Their existence is as if it doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's as if they don't exist. Was that deep? That's deep. Let's now read it. Analogy number 1, your words. Hopefully the words of the Alter Rebbe are going to help us understand this a little bit more. Think, says the Alter Rebbe, think of your own articulations of speech. Or think of the words you hear in your conscious thoughts. Visualize how those articulations emerge from within your core being, your soul's 10 powers. These words are first raw conceptions of your mind, which are then processed to become emotions. And only then they surface into your consciousness as words. The words that appear in your conscious thought emerge out of that preconscious world. So they must exist there in some way. Yet there, in their original context, they aren't realized as words. They are non-entities. So in the source, within the intellect and within the emotion itself, the words are there. They must be there because they're going to emerge from there. But within the emotion itself, you don't sense the words. It's as if they don't exist there. Continues the Alter Rebbe, it's only when your mind and emotions surface as conscious thought that these non-entities appear to take on a life and identity of their own as distinct words. When you could leave the emotion, when you step away from the emotion, you step away from even the moment of intellectual energy, then you can start sensing the words. Okay, the Alter Rebbe says, as was explained at length in chapters 20 to 21, see there. We actually spoke a lot about this in chapter 20 and 21. Those are some pretty tough chapters. Okay. What's the point the Alter Rebbe is trying to say? Words, we feel our words. We could sense our words. We find those words within ourselves to articulate. We could articulate what we're thinking. We could articulate what we understand. We could articulate what we're feeling. But within the emotion itself, those words kind of disappear. Within its source, it loses its existence. It exists, but it basically doesn't exist. Okay, ready for the next analogy? Next analogy is a little bit easier. Analogy number 2. Says the Alter Rebbe, analogy number 2 is of the sun rays. Okay, says the Alter Rebbe, there is another analogy that has been offered for this elsewhere, and this time it's from the physical world. Okay, what we just taught was a much more spiritual concept because it's from the human psyche. But here's from the physical world, which is going to make it a little bit easier. A sun. A sun is a ball, a sphere of energy, which gives off light. So you have a sun, you have the sun itself, And I guess you have the gas of the sun, you have the stuff of the sun, and then you have the light that emerges from the sun. The light, let's call them the rays. A ray from the sun is very real, right? A ray of the sun is very real. It hits us on planet Earth. It gives us light. It gives us warmth. It could give you a sunburn. It's very real. That ray is emerging from the sun. Now, let's just think about this for a second. If that ray is shining even down here on Earth, who knows how many millions of miles away, right? Joel, how many miles away is the sun from us? There you go. Unmute. What was that? You got to unmute, Joel. I can't hear you. All right. Or Renee. Well, how many millions of light years away is it?
The sun is 93 million miles away.
Miles away.
93 million light years away, right?
No, miles.
93 million miles. Okay. 93 million miles away the sun. And the sun's ray is shining here. And it's a very real part of our existence. Let me ask like this. Does the sun's rays shine right next to the sun as well? Does it shine within the sphere of the sun itself? Trick question. Gail says no. Shelley, you were saying no? Does the ray of the sun shine within the sphere of the sun itself?
There, but you can't see it because the sun is big.
It's there, but you can't see it.
Right.
The author is going to say something very interesting. If a sun ray shines here, so far away from the sun, it must be shining within the sun itself with even greater intensity than it's shining here. But when you look at a sun, you don't say, oh, wow, that's such a nice sun and sun rays. Sun rays cease to exist in the place where it's shining most, which is within the sun itself. When it's within the sun, there's no rays. It's just sun. Outside of a fire, you have the firelight. Within the fire, there's just fire, even though the light must be there too. But no. The light doesn't exist there. It must exist, but no, it's as if it doesn't exist. It loses its existence within its source. Okay, that's a little bit more of a simpler analogy, right? Let's read. Then we'll get to questions because we're starting to get low on time. We got to get through the intellectual idea that the author wants us to meditate on. Analogy number 2, sun rays. So let's start again. There's another analogy, says the author Rebbe, that has been offered for this elsewhere, this time from the physical world. Try to visualize a ray of the sun's light while it is still within its source, which is the sun in the sky. Obviously, this ray, what should we call this ray? Let's call him Ray. We'll name him Ray. This ray, whose name is Ray, which is short for Raymond. Okay, this ray, okay, not very funny. Okay, obviously this ray must begin shining while still within the actual sphere of the sun up there, and with even far greater intensity than it shines in the space outside of the sun. Yet there, within the sun, despite its greater intensity, there is no distinct existence to any particular beam of light. There's no sun, and then there's a bunch of beams of light coming in. No. In the sun, it's just sun. Although it is there, says the author, it is as if it does not exist at all. Okay. The author is teaching us something very, very profound over here. Whenever there's something which emerges from a source, like words emerge from an emotion, like a ray emerges from the sun, it only exists when it is outside of its source. That is only when its existence takes on a form of existence. Before then, it exists, but it doesn't really have any existence yet. The author says, 1 second. We emerge from God. But I've got a question for you. Did we ever leave God? That's impossible. God is everywhere. So we are something that comes from God, but never left God. So what are we? We are something which is as if it doesn't exist. The author says we got to think about this. This is not 5 minutes. This is a big topic to study, learn, and internalize. This is massive. Let's conclude this with this next paragraph, and we'll leave it for tonight. Says the Alter Rebbe, that's exactly the way things are, metaphorically speaking, with our reality and everything about it. We see a world. Yeah, our perception, we see a world. But really, this world is still within its source. What's the source? The infinite light that is generating it. And within that context, it can hardly be said to exist. And this is explained there at length. So do we exist? Our perceptions say we exist. Our perceptions say the world exists. Our perception says the world is more real than God. But when we tap into what our soul really knows, what the faith that our soul really has, what really is our world in relation to God? The more we study, the more we learn, we will actually come to a certain awareness that the world is very much batal. It's as if it actually doesn't exist. It exists, but really doesn't really exist. It's as if it doesn't exist. Now, the author is going to tell us, right now this just sounds like a really big, difficult, mind-bending concept, which is very hard to wrap our heads around. But the author is going to tell us that if we sit and learn about this and meditate about it, it messes with your brain. It changes the way you think. How does it change the way you think? It changes life. Life begins to change if you really study and learn about this and start pulling this faith out of your soul, out of your heart. How is it going to change? That we're going to have to wait for next week. But the author is actually going to tell us how life, quality of life changes. Things start changing when you meditate on this stuff. And dear friends, 8:31, I think that's a wrap for tonight. L'chaim, l'chaim. We got some big stuff of Hasidic philosophy tonight. Thank you all for joining. Next week, we'll see where this takes us. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Everybody.
But this is tough stuff, but you'll see it all hits down to earth next week.
Yeah, well, my mind is blown right now, so thank you.
Okay, so we got to think about it. We got to think about it.
Yeah.
This class is not about thinking. The thinking happens when you're done the class. Now you have to process it.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you,
everybody.
Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Yes,
Great
Renee, go ahead.
class. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm struggling with it, but I'm trying to figure out. I always learned that we have a relationship with Hashem, that we're co-creators in the process, that this relationship is a covenantal relationship, but everything the Alter Rebbe is saying seems to contradict that, if I'm understanding this, because the batal is that we're not separate, we're not another entity to have a relationship with Hashem. Like I'm kind of confused by that, because I always thought that, I mean, if we don't, what do we need prayer for then? What do we need words for then if we're part of the one? And if you feel that, why would you need prayers and mitzvot? I mean,
you are asking such a good question. I really mean that. Don't worry. The Alter is not going to disappoint.
don't worry.
Meaning,
I'm confused.
I'll put it this way.
Okay.
The very elementary way to think about it is that I exist and God exists. That's great.
Mhm.
And God is interested in a relationship with me. Good news for God. I'm actually interested today in having a relationship with him too. So we can meet at the negotiations table. He gives me mitzvahs. I accept them. And now we're in a covenantal relationship. That is a very elementary way to think about it and a mistaken way to think about it. The Alter is totally graduating us from that perspective. The premises are changing. So a little bit, the Alter is deconstructing the way we think about ourselves and our relationship with God. No. We are batal. We are batal. The world actually is as if it doesn't exist. What happened with the whole relate? Right? Well, what's mitzvahs about? What's prayer all about? Do I even exist? Do I even matter? Do I even this? Am I even something separate? Oh, don't worry. We're getting there. We are literally getting there. The Alter is marching us to exactly that question.
Okay, so that's next week.
I can't promise just next week, but we're
Okay.
warming up towards there.
Okay.
But we're
Okay.
we're very much heading in exactly your direction, which is, what does God want from me? Why does God want something from me? What is
Right.
my
Why does he
purpose?
need anything from us?
Why does he need anything?
I mean,
We're
you know,
the Tanya is literally in a march towards exactly your question.
okay.
But you need to have this premise. This is getting us
Okay.
in the right place.